Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Super excited to be back for the Home Building Know-How live streaming series that we are bringing to you guys every Wednesday, 12 o'clock, and super excited for the very special guest we have on today. That's my father, our construction manager, the founders of the company as well too, Joe Simone, and we're going to talk site cost. Very, very, very common topic when it comes to building homes, site costs. So I thought I'd get my dad on, and he's the one on site building the homes. I thought it'd be a great idea to get him on, ask some questions, and understand the reports on what we can actually get when in the early stages of building our home, to help us understand site costs and get everything sort of out of the way up front. So in a second, I'm going to bring my father on. But guys, if you know anybody who's in the process or about to build and wants to know a little bit more about site costs, now's the time to tag them in the comments below so they can watch this video and they can experience this with us as well too. So guys, tag them below and let them come on this journey and this conversation we're about to have. If you guys don't have any questions, definitely drop in the comments below so we can handle those questions as we go through the live stream. All right, so I'm going to bring in my father. Dad, you there?
Yes. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good. A little bit of delay. Awesome. So thanks for coming on today. So just before we get into it, Dad, maybe you can just give everyone a bit of a quick little background on yourself and how long you've been doing this for, maybe.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Look, I've been in the building industry for over 35 years. Come straight out of school and done a carpentry apprenticeship and just went on from there. And then eventually we just started to build a few speckies, and then eventually we opened up our own home building industry, which is Simone Homes at present.
Awesome. It's actually quite funny, guys, that, because the way this presented, my father is actually in the office right behind me. But I thought because it's easier for you guys to view this like this, we decided to do this. So today we are talking about the 3 reports you should get when it comes to site costs. So Dad, I want to just get straight into it and tackle the site cost conversation. The first one I want to talk about is BASIX. Now, before I sort of bring it over to you and ask you how BASIX is going to affect site costs, I might just give everybody a bit of a rundown if they're not sure of what the word BASIX means, because it is a term that's brought up a lot when it comes to site costs or when it comes to all that sort of stuff. So BASIX, guys, is the building index when it comes to your energy efficiency. So they're going to take the report on that, and they're going to tell you what you need to do so your home can sustain the energy efficiency on its own. So, Dad, I'm going to hand it over to you. Could you, open it up to a couple of the things that the BASIX report is going to affect the cost when it comes to finding that stuff out?
Yeah, so with the BASIX, you've got a number of factors to take in consideration. We've got the heating and cooling. So, your glazing, your e-glazing on the windows. I mean, if you have large windows, large ceiling heights, they might affect the size of your glazing, the thickness of the glazing. It also might have to be the insulation of the walls and the ceiling might have to be increased to allow for that also, for the heating and cooling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I know also the installation is something that's going to be affected with the BASIX as well too.
So was that, Daniel?
Installation.
That's correct, the installation. That's what I was saying. We normally stick to the normal installation bats. If there's a different requirement, we might have to increase the installation to a bigger grade on the walls and ceiling, but sometimes it might only be in certain areas. It might not be the whole area of the house. Depends what the BASIX engineer designs.
Yeah, I know, when we talk with clients a lot about, and they do have questions about BASIX, and one of the questions that comes up, everybody loves to have large windows in their home with lots of glass and lots of, natural light coming through. So could you touch on how the large windows are going to affect the BASIX?
So with a large window, there's more natural light coming in. So this is going to affect the heating and cooling. So the glazing may have to go from a 3 mil to a 6 mil to possibly even a 10 mil glazing, just to restrict that heating and cooling, because you've got more exposure to the sunlight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's one of the common sort of questions that we do discuss with the clients is how the windows are going to affect the BASIX. And, what you said is right because, all the natural light coming in, this is all going to affect the energy of the home. So if it's going to have more cool air coming in, more of the frost coming in, then you're going to have to spend more with your power and your air conditioning, all that sort of stuff. So you want the home to sort of self-sustain it can without using a lot of that sort of power, which is why, solar gets talked about so much these days as well too. So, all right, so I think maybe we should move on to the second report that we should get when it comes to site costs. And that second report, guys, is going to be a soil test. We do hear a lot of things about a soil test. So, Dad, I want to ask you sort of a couple of questions about that as well, too. So can you explain? So, guys, before I pass it over to my dad, I'll just explain to you what a soil test is. So what this is going to do, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to give us the depth of the piers, and it's also going to give us the soil classification. So, Dad, can you just touch on those couple of points? Is it how that's going to affect the cost of the home?
Yeah, so when we come to this, which we are known as a GA Tech report, which gives you the classification of the soil, that will indicate whether the soil is sandy, clay, whether there's sandstone, whether there's rock. And then what they do two boreholes, one at the front of the property, one at the back of the property, just to govern the type of soil. And that will also indicate how deep we have to go with our piers, because until then, we're only estimating the depth of the piers on an average. Once we get this geotech report, they will give us an actual depth, whether it be 1 metre, 1.8, 600, depends on the type of soil on your block.
So that's so some of the people that may not be watching, because I know we talk to a lot of first home buyers at the moment. There's a lot of first home buyers in the market. So could you just explain to them a little bit more detail about why, if a pier needs to be deeper, what are some of the costs associated with a pier, and a pier hole being, digging the hole? What's some of the costs associated with
you've got to understand, once you move any soil, it virtually doubles and triples. So once you dig a pier hole, whether it be 400 or 450 in diameter, that soil that comes out actually doubles in cubic meters. So the weight of it and the mass of it doubles. So that's going to affect your costing dramatically, because we have to allow for that soil to remove, because you cannot use that soil. So every pier will have to be stockpiled and removed from site, unless you've got a field somewhere on your site. So that's a big factor in your costing. So of course, it's always ideal to get a level block that hasn't got much fill, because once you've got fill in a block, you've got to go past the fill, whether it be 1 metre to 1.5 metre of fill or 600 of fill, get down to natural ground. So you've already lost that 1 metre of the fill, and that's already soil you have to dig up and remove, and then plus you've got to still get to natural ground level or to shale for those piers to sit on.
So one of the things that are going to affect the cost when it comes to depth of the piers is going to be the actual removal of the soil. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. That's right.
And what are other costs associated? So potentially then we've got to fill the pier. Is that right?
That's right. So those piers have to be filled with mass concrete. Mm-hmm. So if you're digging down 1.5 or 1.5 of mass concrete, so normally a normal property would have about 60 piers. So you divide the depth by the number of piers, and that's your linear meter rate, sort of linear meters of piers.
Yeah, perfect. Because I know a lot of questions that the first home buyers begin to ask is sort of understanding the piering and the depth and some of the costs actually associated with that. So that really great for everybody watching to sort of understand that, the deeper you go with the piers, you have a couple of things you got to take into consideration. You got to, remove all that soil. So it's either got to be stockpiled on site or it's got to be removed right away. But you then also have to fill the piers with concrete. So, getting that soil test and that the borehole test done early on is going to give us, the builders, a bit of a great indication on how deep we need to go for the piers, so we can accommodate for the soil removal, and we can also accommodate for the concrete as well too. Also, too, on those reports, we mentioned that the soil classification. So you're going to touch on the soil classification and how that can affect, the costing of the slabs and things like that.
Yeah, so with the soil classification, they'll determine whether it's going to be an M-class slab, H-class slab. So this will determine the thickness of the slab, the depth of the beams possibly going across. So all this is to take into consideration of the soil. Sometimes the developer will have some sort of soil classification on their report, but not always.
Mm-hmm. So then this report will be given to the engineer, and he will, design the slab structure accordingly to withstand whatever the soil classification is, and that'll, determine the thickness of the slab. That'll determine the slab classification, also the steel, everything that needs to go within that slab. Is that right?
That's correct.
And obviously, the more concrete that we will use, and the thicker the slab, the higher grade steel, then obviously that's going to affect the costing.
That's correct. That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so guys, that's taken care of the report number 2, and I do see some questions coming through. So guys, if you do have any questions, we'll try and come back to the questions at the end and see if we can answer those, but definitely drop a comment below. We'll come back to some of the questions. If we don't get to them now, we'll definitely come back to into the comments and start addressing some of these questions. But guys, we are talking site costs. We're talking site costs. We're talking reports that you can get up front to help you understand the cost as best as possible before we actually get to sites. And so far, we've covered BASIX. We've now covered soil test, and number 3, we want to cover a contours survey report or a survey report. So just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what this is going to give us, this report is going to get a registered surveyor out on site, and he's going to give us the actual RL. So he's going to give us the level of the property, okay? He's going to give us the depth, how much fall, how much fill is on the property, and where the services are and things that we need to account for. So Dad, if you want to just touch on the contour survey and, explain some things and how that's going to affect the costing, the site cost of the home.
Okay, so before we can draw up any plans, we always get a contour survey done on the block of land. So they take, it's on the plan, looks like a number of lines going across, and that gives us the levels of the land, where the front of the property falls or the back of the property falls, and that is governed by each number on this. So it might be 1 meter at the front, it might be 1.5 at the back. That's telling us it's a 500 fall from front to back. Mm-hmm. So we need to determine this. So when we draw the plans, we might have to add a bit of a drop edge beam on one of the sides that has a drop edge of a drop away of the ground, or vice versa. So this is how we can determine the RL, which is the top of the slab that we need to determine.
So you just mentioned something there, being a drop edge beam. So for some of the people that are watching who are first home buyers and may not sort of understand that terminology, so maybe if you just break it down in a simple form, exactly sort of what a drop edge is, and just sort of give the guys a bit of an idea in what that's for and why would that sort of, be needed.
So a drop edge beam, if I can clarify, is, say, for example, if your house is running from front to back and your land falls, like I was saying, towards the back, well, that back part of your property will have a drop edge beam, which is the top of your slab to the natural ground level, which may be 500. So that side of that there where it drops down is called a drop edge beam. So that means that has to be boarded up, and it costs more to do that, because you've got to return your steel down and have a drop edge beam. Your brickwork actually starts from the natural ground level up.
Yeah. So what I'm understanding, if you're saying that your property sort of falls like that, and your house needs to come in sort of level of that, you need a part here to support the slab. So you've got your natural ground running down like this, but your slab's going to be coming in level. So that part here is necessarily where the drop edge needs to be to support the remainder of the slab. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
So from the contour survey report, we're going to be able to determine the actual level of the property, which is then going to be able to determine our natural ground level, and is again going to be able to determine what our finished floor level is going to be for the slab, and we'll be able to work out what the difference is. And that'll be able to give us the, drop edge beams and calculations according to with that.
That's correct.
Awesome. So guys, there we sort of have it. There are the 3 tests that we want to use and want to get when we understand in site costs. So Dad, I'll hand it back over to you in a second as well, if there's anything else you wanted to add in relation to site costs as well too. But guys, we went over those 3 main reports, and if you're going to be able to get these reports very early in your piece, you're going to save yourself, a lot of headaches when you go to site and you don't know these things. And we covered BASIX. We covered soil test, and we also covered a contour survey. So if you're able to get these reports very early in the piece, you're going to save yourself a long way to get in the headaches when you get to site. And what I recommend to people is sometimes, you may need to get your plans finished before you can actually finalize the BASIX. The soil test and the survey report, you are going to need engineers completed. So there are a few things that need to happen along the way. But if you're, in communication with your builder and you're talking about these reports, then you're going to be able to sort of get some understanding cost up front. So Dad, did you have anything else you wanted to sort of add when it comes to anything like that?
That's all I can recommend to our clients is possibly if you can get whatever certificate or surveys you can get from the developer, because they will know when they develop that land, the roads, the curbs, they will know what fill they've actually put on the property because they'll have that report. So that's a good start. So I know it's not always possible to buy a property that hasn't been filled, but if it gives you an indication that there's less fill than another property, well, it's going to save you a few $1,000s, which is going to help towards something else.
That's definitely a good point. And guys, if you go back to a couple of weeks ago, I think it might have been last week, last week on one of the videos, we talked about, 9 costs that'll save you when purchasing a block, and exactly what my father said right there. If you're able to get some of these reports up front from the developer, if it's unregistered or registered, you're going to be able to understand how much fill and how much cut and fill and a little bit about the block. Because you may be looking at purchasing a block that's going to be $5,000 or $10,000 cheaper. However, that block may have a lot of fall to it, and may also have a lot of fill to it, which is going to affect, soil depth and drop edge beams, things like that as well too. So Dad, I do thank you for joining us today. I'll let you get back to it, take it on your site visit.
No worries. Pleasure,
you,
Daniel.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so there you are. Spent some time with my father, Joe Simone, getting him in here talking all things site cost. So, guys, we covered a lot of things today when it comes to site cost. And if you're in that process in the early stages of getting your plans done or trying to fight the right block, really understanding these site costs and, at a very sort of high level sort of point here, you're now able to have a discussion, when you're purchasing the block or with a builder as well too, to understand these a little bit more. So, guys, once again, we covered BASIX, which we're going to need probably the plans to be almost finalised, but you can have a little bit of a, provisional sum in your tender if you need to do that as well too. We also covered soil test and we also covered contour survey. So there are 3 reports that are going to really help you understand your site costs as well too. And guys, if you get all these sort of reports done, then when you go to site, you shouldn't necessarily see these huge differences because you have a level of understanding up front and early on. So guys, if you have any questions that you want to know more about site costs or anything let me know in the comments below. If you have anything that you want us to cover on the home building know-how live streams that we are doing every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, you can have your lunch, sit down and join us for a conversation. I'd love to know, reach out to send a message or let us know in the comments below. All right, guys, that is it for me. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much to my father, Joe, for joining us today. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.